Hello, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Madimiri Empire. So, I had actually worked on this video quite a while ago, but I never got to it. Then, I eventually remembered that I had this video, and I thought I'd do a video about it while it was here. Do note that many of the names I will be pronouncing will be pretty hard for me to say because they're written a lot differently than normal names, and the words they're kind of weird. So, without with that out of the way, let's begin. So, before the Madimiri Empire existed, there was a different empire that had dominated in the north. It was called the Masudian Empire. The Masudian Empire began in 402 of the Second Era and found itself conquering vast amounts of territories from its neighbors. Now, eventually, by the 500s, it had dominated the northwest of Maldora. However, due to bloated officials and corruption, the empire quickly collapsed by the 600s. This is where a warlord period began, which is very common in Maldoran history in general, which this ended up founding the Madimiri Tavern, which is the origin of the empire. So after the fall of the Masudian Empire in the 600s, a period of time in which the warlords would battle each other began. There were dozens of warlords, each hoping to outcompete against each other for territory and power. During this time, the Madimiri Tavern would be founded, named after the middle name, which is the placement of the family name in the Olsgade culture, which dominated in the north, who was named Konoga Madimiri Cigaro. This tavern sold all sorts of unique and localized drinks and made a lot of money. This allowed for Konoga's children to hire mercenaries, and eventually his great-grandson, Sigaro Madimiri Sonekano, was able to split his tavern from the warlords, making it officially, by a technicality, its own warlord state. In 705, Sonekano marched an army north, defeating and conquering the Zulugo warlord state. Afterwards, Sonekano began a rapid series of conquests surrounding his territory, resulting in the battles of Unguta and Naxon. These two battles were decisive victories for Sonekano, resulting in him declaring himself an emperor of the Madimiri royal family, and thus the emperor of all of Maldora as well, in the year 716. After the Battle of Naxong, Sonekano secured tribute from states in the north before eventually dying in 730. So, how did Sonekano achieve his conquests? He utilized tactics well, such as flanking his enemies in combat. He was skilled at using the geography to his advantage. He was he was rich and was able to fund larger armies than his enemies. He introduced heavy discipline into his newly formed army, and his rivals were often feuding with one another, allowing for him to divide and conquer. So, after the many conquests of Sonekano, the new Madimiri Empire had to establish a good governance system, and thus they went to a system known as the Tubuku system. This relied on localized warlords whom would be rewarded with titles in return for paying heavy taxes, such as localized leaders in the military in times of war, and acting as localized leaders in the military in times of war, and providing manpower, plus the warlord's entire standing army. So imagine it like this. The warlords had to give a certain amount of manpower, aka men, to the Madimiri Empire. They would be granted titles and certain positions, but they also had to use their armies as well during wartime. This system did have some limitations, which included some warlords being disloyal as they felt that it was unfair towards them, and the fact that the size of the empire made it difficult to enforce the obedience of many vassals. The new emperor, Eunuch Madimiri Makmava, believed that the system of governance would cause the warlords to become obedient quickly. However, instead of this happening, the warlords began to take advantage of the loose control and would begin to gain power for themselves. And this would lead to the Usogo Rebellion. In 745, 15 years into the reign of the Emperor Eunuch Madimiri Makmava, a group of powerful warlords banded together and rebelled against the emperor. This they did this because Eunuch, after being pressured by his inner circle, which is advisors and close relatives, passed the Usogo laws, which restricted the power of the warlords by preventing them from raising armies above 80,000 men strong. Within the first few months, these warlords took many key cities, including the capital of the Madimiri Empire, Madirias. Afterwards, they went on to kill the emperor after capturing him in the Battle of Tutuvian Hills. Tutuvian Hills. After executing the emperor, the warlords tried to kill his family after hearing about where they were located. However, this was a trap, and many of the warlords would be killed in or captured during the battle. With this, Eunuch's eldest daughter, Nikana Madimiri Eunuch, who was 14 at the time, led an army into a decisive victory against the remaining rebels in the Battle of Gadigar in the year 751, ending the rebellion. So she was 14 years old when she led the battle and won against the rebellion. In 752, Nikana was crowned as the Empress of the Madimiri Empire. She would have a regent in charge. However, she proved so skilled and diplomatic and in the military arts that she took complete control of the empire only 1 year later. She prepared a series of reforms, such as an introduction of a more centralized ruling system, where they appointed governors who would rule on behalf of the emperor/empress. In this system, the empress had a council of envoys who would adventure into the major cities of each province consistently, ensuring that the empire was running in good order. She also used her envoys to collect taxes, which she would use to fund various things. One of the most important reforms was promoting leaders and administrators based on talent, rather than class and nobility, also known as meritocracy. So the empire was more centralized, the army was more professional, the empire's major cities began to rely more on farming, and the cities across the empire were growing and being expanded by the wealthy bureaucrats. These were just some of the changes of the empire that were going on in this time. And during this period of time, we would begin to see the height of Madimiri power and glory. Not only that, but we would also see an increase in prosperity, at least for a while. So in 763, Nikana began a series of conquests in the south, leading to the subjugation of many tribes, such as the Sakaso, Ngulunu, and many more. These conquests brought them into the jungles of central Maldora, which contained many different tribes. Fighting broke out way after these conquests, with some of the conflicts lasting centuries, off and on. The jungles were not known by the Madimiri soldiers, and so they struggled. However, due to various reasons, which includes their strategic superiority and how they maneuvered their armies, not the technological advances I wrote down, my bad, they were able to conquer a small amount of the tribes while subjugating and vassalizing or placing tributary states amongst the rest. And it's supposed to say around like I believe 780, 770, somewhere around there is what looks like by the end of her conquests. With all these conquests, there were several notable tribes who were able to resist the Madimiri invaders. To the west lay the Igbo tribe, which had lived there for well over 1,000 years. When the Madimiri Empire attacked, the Igbo warriors used javelins and throwing spears before retreating into the jungle. These guerrilla tactics caused heavy casualties for the army. Along with this, these spears would often be smeared in poison or manure, elephant dung, which would cause disease to be spread. In the in the Madimiri army, which had a lack of healer mages, which would lead to a lot of death. In 774, the attack on the Igbo was called off. Another notable tribe were the Nashkinago tribe, who made an alliance with the neighboring Hugmundu tribe using similar tactics which killed thousands of soldiers. Ultimately, though, the Matabele Empire was able to conquer a large part of the northern and central parts of the continent. They had built infrastructure to connect cities to their empire. They also had to rule over 2 billion people, many of whom spoke different languages. Thus, a huge set of envoys, tax collectors, and much more people had to be established, and a large educated class of bureaucrats and nobility in general had to be created to rule such over a huge and diverse set of many different cultures, which which included learning specific traditions, learning the languages, and etc. Ruling was hard beyond the north of Maldora, and so many local rulers would stay in power with frequent envoys arriving multiple times a year. This system, having envoys repeatedly go to ensure stability, is known as the Tsuki, which would ensure stability and make sure payments such as taxes and tributes were up to date. So, in 784, Nikana died after battling with many illnesses for 4 years. She left behind a centralized powerhouse, one which controlled, directly and indirectly, half of Maldora, and one which would eventually become the containers of an entire continent. However, things would not be easy. Due to the huge population of Maldora, finances and resources began to be a huge issue. And things such as a professional bureaucracy, large upper class, and a huge army were needed to keep the empire stable. For now, though, these problems wouldn't be major. However, as time progressed, the bureaucracy, nobility, and general upper class would become more incompetent and corrupt, which would lead to disasters coming. Now, before I say my goodbye, I do also want to let you know about another fact. So, the Madimiri Empire at this time was way more powerful than the Nakarthan Empire. For example, the Nakarthan Empire had millions of soldiers, but across their empire. The Madimiri Empire, on the other hand, could easily weigh in like 10 million soldiers onto one front at once due to their huge population. Now, technically speaking, they could go into the tens of millions. However, these were very expensive armies, and regularly you wouldn't see such huge armies. Now, this is why armies in Maldor typically would consist of maybe a couple million at best. However, under the Madimiri Empire and some others in the future, you are going to be seeing some huge, gigantic armies. For example, let me look up. I gotta remember one of these battles. Um, give me a bit. Okay, so in the Yuxogo rebellion, over 10 million soldiers battled each other with, I believe, um, roughly like 6 mil. I'm not sure the numbers, but like, it was like 5 million against 6 million soldiers in total that were battling in one big area. So yeah, now with that out the way, thank you all for watching. I really do enjoy the fact that each and every one of you who spends a small part of their day to watch my videos does so. I also very much enjoy making these videos, as this is my own universe and I do enjoy creating this lore. So that's it. I hope each and every one of you has a good day or night, and I'll see you all another time. Don't forget, I will be still working on those Buzovian videos.